Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Hi there, and welcome to another edition of Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Good to have you along for the half hour. Stick around. We always have much to teach you, right? John Scholes here momentarily on your screen. Lior Samfiru from EmploymentLawyer.ca. Contact information, always the first thing we talk about to reach Lior and his team, 1-855-821-5900. There's the number. Email address, ask@employmentlawyer.ca. And for all other concerns, the website, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. We'll refer to that a little later on the show when we dip into the severance calculator. That's on the way. Plus, our main topic will be employment contracts, the facts you need to know. That's in our second segment. Plus, I think we'll get to some phone calls from our long-running radio shows across the country. And we always tell you, you can join us weekly, Sundays, as a matter of fact, here locally in the GTA, 1 p.m. on News Talk 1010. An opportunity for you to text us and call into the show during the hour and have some of your questions answered. Maybe you'll appear on this show. A little later on, we'll find out if your phone call does cut the mustard and get on this show. But we got lots to get through, Lior, including the week that was and some emails. It's a busy show, so let's get started. Pal, what do you got going on?
Hey, John, great to be here. Great to be talking employment law and to hopefully help all our good viewers about this very important topic. We all have jobs. We know that. We all need to know what our rights are on the job. We all need to know what the law can do for us. It is okay to ask, what does the law do for me? How can I use the law to my advantage? That's fine. That's why we have laws. And on this show, we'll tell you what the law does, what it says, how it can help you, how to respond if your employer is doing something wrong, what your rights are if you've lost your job, what your rights are if you're not getting the compensation that you're owed. You name it, we touch on this on the show. But again, this is a 30-minute show. If we had many more hours, we could cover all topics. On this 30-minute show, we'll cover what we can. But beyond the show, you can reach me and my team in the office so we can actually roll up our sleeves and help you with the issue that you're dealing with. So throughout the show, you'll get that contact information. But let me give you a flavor of the types of things that I deal with, and I'll tell you about a situation that came across my desk very recently. I spoke with a very nice lady who had been with the same employer for 6 years, just over 6 years, and she had always worked a type of a full-time schedule, Monday to Friday, and the occasional weekend as well, 9 to 5. She was happy with that schedule. It fit well in her lifestyle. It allowed her to support her family, so things were fine. Well, very recently, unfortunately, her employer started slowing down significantly. Maybe it's a sign of the economy, but that employer lost a lot of business. It was a lot slower. So her employer announced that from now on, rather than give regular, consistent full-time hours, shifts are going to change. So you're going to have a schedule advertised once a week, and sometimes you may work full-time hours. Other weeks you may work part-time, 10, 20 hours only, and you're not going to have consistent full-time hours, at least not until the business picks up again. So she talked to them about it. She said, listen, I'm not going to be able to support my family if I don't work full-time hours. They said, we understand, we feel very bad, but the business is slow, so we can't do anything about it. Fortunately, she called me. She wanted to understand her rights. So let's be very clear here. Her employer is not a bad employer. They're not picking on her. They're not trying to hurt her. They're responding to the needs of the business. But that doesn't make it legal. The question is, can they legally reduce her hours? Can they take her from full-time to part-time, essentially? And the answer is no. Even if it's done for legitimate business reasons, your employer cannot just change your hours, reduce your hours, take you from full-time to part-time, or change your shifts every week if that's not been the case all along. That's a significant change in the terms of employment, and that can result in what we call a constructive dismissal. In other words, she may be able to consider this change as a termination of her employment and proceed to get her full severance. She doesn't just have to accept this and continue working. It's not legal. So there's an important reminder there for everyone. If your schedule is being changed, your hours have been reduced, your pay has been reduced, you don't have to accept it even if it's done for business reasons. You have the option to consider constructive dismissal, and it starts by calling me.
Assuming she loves the job and doesn't want to leave, constructive dismissal, would she have the opportunity to kind of try it, take it out for a spin? If it works, okay, I'll stick to it. If not, I can still get out of there with compensation?
It's a bit risky, but one of the things I would tell her to do is to tell her employer, listen, business is slow, so fine. I'll do this for the next month. And if business picks up, wonderful, I'll go back to the way it was. If it's not, I'm not okay with this. And then she could do it for, let's say, that month and then pursue constructive dismissal. Of course, the danger with just continuing to work and not saying anything is you're deemed to have accepted it. And then you've given the company the right to do it again. That's a huge problem. So the better approach is if you're faced with a significant change to terms of employment, let's talk about that right away.
Want to cruise over anytime to EmploymentLawyer.ca. That's where you'll find a radio station in your habitat that carries our show on a weekly basis here locally. That's News Talk 1010 Sundays at 1 p.m. As I mentioned, we get a lot of phone calls on the shows. We play them back on here. We'll get to our first phone call now, so listen up and we'll dissect it a little bit, Lior. Here we go.
My daughter's going through this. She's been there 15 years. Unfortunately, for no fault of her own, the last couple of years she's been off on a LTD. They're saying that we want the latest updated medical from you. If your medical comes back and says, doesn't look like you'll be returning to work for a while, they will fire you immediately. They've already laid out their severance. They're only offering the minimum ESA, which is 1 week per year, and they're offering 15 weeks.
All kinds of wrong here, right?
So in some situations, if you're off on a disability for a very long time and there's no really chance of you coming back, the employer can say this results in a frustration of contract. In other words, because you've been gone a long time, you're not going to come back, we can end employment and only pay you your minimum severance, not your full severance. But for the employer to do that, number one, the absence has to be long, usually a couple of years or more. And you have to have something from a doctor saying, yeah, it's done. This person is not coming back. If the doctor is saying, no, this person may be coming back to work, then the employer cannot terminate. And if they do terminate, they're going to have to pay full severance. So in this case, the employer may be jumping the gun by saying, we're just going to pay you your minimum entitlements. The real question becomes, what is full severance for this person? It's not 15 weeks. Let's go to our severance calculator tool. You can find that, of course, at PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. Again, PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. We're going to use the calculator and let's see what we actually get. So this person is in a clerical role at the age of 44, been there for 15 years. Employer says, no, we're only going to give you 15 weeks. Well, you see that she's probably owed about 15 months, not weeks. That's a huge difference, tens of thousands of dollars of difference. So bottom line is this: if you're unable to work, make sure, of course, you always give a doctor's note, but you may not want to have a doctor's note saying this person can never come back to work at all. If you're not sure what the note should say, how to respond to your employer, that's why I'm here. Call me.
All right, off to another great start. We'll take a short break. Please stick around with us. On the other side of the break, we'll get into our main topic, employment contracts. Facts you need to know. That is on the way as we continue. Lots more of the Employment Law Show. Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Stick around.
Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
And welcome back to Ask a Lawyer, CP24, John Scholes, and of course, employment lawyer Lior Samfiru here every week. Want to reach out? You can do so. Here's the number for you, 1-855-821-5900. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca for email or scan that QR code on the right side of your screen and it'll take you there as well. Always reach out. Do not hesitate to reach out to Lior and his team and have that conversation on your own. Main topic time, employment contracts, what you need to know. I guess the first one off the top, Lior, is the obvious one. What are employment contracts and why are they so important?
Listen, we all have jobs, right? We started off the show by saying that. Well, the employment contract is the document that governs the rules at your job, what your employer can do, what your rights are. So the law is very good, very generous, but the law also allows you to give away rights in an employment contract. So believe it or not, for most people, that employment contract is not necessarily a good document. It's an extremely important document, but potentially it could be very problematic. It could have terms, for example, that limit your future severance. It could have terms that give the company the right to change your job and your pay, to allow the company to put you on a temporary layoff. All those things the company cannot do unless you sign an employment agreement that gives them that right. So it's an extremely important document. You want to be very careful. And by the way, don't stress out if you didn't sign one. You're better off not having one, and certainly have me look at it before you do accept an offer and sign that employment contract.
We always picture, signing the employment contract, the pages getting slid over to you or DocuSign online. But how about a verbal contract? Does it hold as much weight? Is it worth it? Is it good?
So in theory, a verbal contract is the same as a written contract. In other words, if you have a deal and it's verbal, then you have a deal. The question, of course, is can you prove what the terms were? So what I say this for individuals, if you are accepting a job and there's a deal about a bonus or about a promotion or anything like that, and it's verbal, send an email confirming that, hey, confirming we agreed that I'm going to get a bonus after a year or that I'm going to get this promotion or whatever it is. You don't have to have a contract that you sign, but you don't want someone to then say, no, we never agreed to that. That wasn't the deal. So send an email. But yes, generally speaking, John, a verbal contract is the same. But if you have something that's very important to you, I want you to put it in writing.
How about this scenario? So you've got an employer who's maybe watching this show a few times, starting to get a little wiser, a little smarter, and you're already an employee, but they decide to slide a contract over to you saying, just sign this for me. What do you think about it?
So always be suspicious, be concerned, be very, very suspicious of that employment agreement that's offered to you once you're already working. So if you already have a job, you're fine, you're doing your work, and your employer comes to you and says, we want you to sign a new agreement, it's not good news. It's never good news. In fact, the only reason your employer is going to want you to sign a new employment agreement is because it provides for better terms for the employer. So it could take away future severance. It could take away other things that you would otherwise have automatically. You can say no. You can't be punished for saying no. You cannot be threatened into it. You can't be fired for cause. At a minimum, have me review that new employment agreement. And in most cases, the answer should be no, employer. I'm okay with the way things are. I am not interested in signing that new contract.
Most people, when they start a new job, they'll get a new contract, they're going to look at the big things. I get the right pay, okay. If I get the right vacation, yeah, okay, maybe a bonus or maybe a few other things, cursory things they'll look at for a new job, or I guess even on the other end, when they lose a job, and that's the time to pull out the contract. Should they have it reviewed and looked at by you first before signing anything?
John, I can't comment whether your salary should be $50,000 or $55,000 or if you should get 3 weeks or 4 weeks vacation, but there's extremely important legal terms in the contract that you need to understand. Let me give you an example. So you're worried about whether you're getting paid $50,000 or $55,000, but imagine this scenario, John. Imagine that you sign a contract that allows the company to let you go at any time, pay you almost nothing. Oh, and by the way, if that happens, you can't work in the industry for 3 years. Well, are you still concerned about whether you're getting $50,000 or $55,000? I think you understand that there's other more important things potentially that you could be owed and you should be aware of. And that's just one example. So bottom line is, it's one of the smartest things you can do to have an employment agreement properly reviewed. And remember, less is more. If you didn't sign one, don't ask to sign one. If you had something on the back of a napkin, I like that. I like that better than a 10-page agreement. Keep that in mind.
Okay, a reminder once again, locally here in the GTA News Talk 1010, Sundays, 1 p.m., catch our radio show. It's a complete hour. We make the phone calls. We answer questions on the program as well. Let's get to phone call number 2 right now. Listen.
I was promoted to a higher volume store than what I'm in. I'm in retail. And because of what's going on, they changed the structure of this particular store, so it's a much higher volume. I did receive an increase for this change, but now they are sending me back to the lower volume store. So I'm just wondering if they're able to take away the increase or if I'm still entitled to that.
So they kind of threw her a bone and took it back, right?
So, yeah, and she's concerned legitimately they may want to take that pay increase back. So this goes back to the issue that an employer cannot make significant changes to terms of employment. What that means is your employer can make some changes. When it comes to your salary, generally speaking, up to 10% of pay or pay decrease not good. You're not going to be happy. But up to that, an employer generally can do that. Anything beyond that oftentimes is a constructive dismissal. So the answer to her question is, can they reduce her pay somewhat? Yes. If it's a significant reduction, then no, it's a constructive dismissal. And it's nothing to do with the fact that this was a change in volume. It really comes down to what the employer's rights are. An employer has a bit of leeway to make changes to terms of employment, but if they cross that line and they use that leeway or go beyond that leeway, that's where a constructive dismissal comes in.
The phone calls on the show always come in threes. The third one's on the other side of the break, so stick around for that. Lots more programming and lots more questions to be answered in the following few minutes as well as we continue Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Don't go anywhere.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Welcome back. This is Ask a Lawyer, CP24. John Scholes here, and Lior Samfiru joining every week as well. You can always reach out to Lior when we're done the show, 1-855-821-5900 by phone, email ask@employmentlawyer.ca, and that QR code is usable there as well. Okay, phone calls come in threes, radio show across the country, locally again, News Talk 1010, our brother station, and that can be found at employmentlawyer.ca. Sundays at 1 p.m. is when we do that hour of radio. Third phone call, let's get into it.
I have been working on a freelance basis for a company for a very long time, over 25 years. If they decide not to use me anymore, do I have any recourse? It's on a freelance basis, but they consider me staff. I have a company email, I have company business cards.
In a normal situation, how many hours a week would you work?
About 25.
Do you work for anyone else?
I do have other freelance clients as well, yes.
And is it fair to say that this particular company is your biggest one?
Of course.
I think I know where this is headed, Lior. What do you think?
Well, listen, 25 years.
Yeah.
She earns most of her income there. She has business cards. She has company emails. Well, here's what it is. She's either an employee and has the rights of an employee, or maybe she is a dependent contractor. A dependent contractor is someone that's like an employee, and because they're like an employee, they have termination entitlements like an employee. So you actually may not be an employee, maybe a contractor, and still are entitled to severance. But either way, any way you slice this, after 25 years, she has significant entitlements. And the key I want you to remember here is this. It's very common to be misclassified as an independent contractor. I'm going to go a step beyond that and say that most people that believe they're truly independent contractors are not. They are either employees, and they have the rights of an employee, or they're a dependent contractor and they get severance like an employee. So now that we know that this person is not an independent contractor, she is owed severance. We're going to do this again. We're going to go back to the severance calculator. You can find that, of course, at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Let's see what that gives us. So 59 years old in a technical role, been there for 25 years. It's a long time. Employer says, no, we're not going to pay you anything. You're an independent contractor. Nonsense. You see right there, she could be owed over 20 months of pay. Okay, it could be, frankly, as much as 2 years' pay. That's how much she is owed. That's her entitlement. So I want everyone to remember, contractors may well or may likely get severance as well. Call me so we can find out.
And by the way, you want to drill down a little further on that whole dependent contractor, independent contractor, go to that website, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. There's a section on exactly that. Very useful. Let's get into an email here. Lior says, my boss scheduled an unexpected performance review for next week. Despite the fact that I've had years of glowing reviews, I know that a few coworkers were let go last month under similar circumstances. What should I do?
Well, certainly if his employer wants to let him go, there's nothing that can be done to stop that, right? An employer can let you go, but your employer has to pay you severance. That's true even if your performance is excellent. Even if you've done nothing wrong, your employer can still let you go with severance. On the other hand, if the purpose of this meeting is to give you a negative review that you don't agree with, the answer, of course, is you have to say so in writing. You want to follow up with an email saying, employer, gave me this negative review, but here's what you need to know. Here's what you didn't account for. Here's what I have to clarify. Put that in writing. So ultimately, if you do that, you're protecting your job, you're protecting your ability to get severance at a minimum. And of course, if he's let go, he has to call me because we need to make sure that he gets everything that he is owed.
Want to take a short break, get to a live stream question that Lior has every week. Also does the live streaming. I'll give you details on the other side, how you can join in on that as we continue Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. And welcome back to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Last couple minutes to go. We'll get to a question. Lior does a lot of live streaming, by the way. Busy guy. He's on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. You can join at stlawyers.ca. Beyond that, call him 1-855-821-5900 or email ask@employmentlawyer.ca. Okay, here we go, Lior. From the live stream, says, after a year in his new job, my brother was hit hard by COVID. It took him 3 months to recover, and he's still not fully healthy. When he returned to work last week, he found many of his duties were reassigned. His boss has now scheduled a meeting with him and 2 HR reps. Should he be worried about his job security?
Yes, very likely. He may well be losing his job during this meeting. Remember what I had said before the break. Generally speaking, an employer can let you go at any time with full severance. Now, there's exceptions to that, and one of them, you can't be let go for medical reasons. So, for example, if he's still struggling with his health and he needs some support and accommodation, and they don't want to do that, they just want to let him go, that's illegal. You cannot be let go because you're suffering from a medical condition. You cannot be let go because your employer doesn't want to accommodate you. But short of that, if it's maybe a restructuring and they don't have work, yes, they can let him go. But that severance can be as much as 2 years' pay. So no matter what, no matter who you are or the circumstances, if you lost your job, you've been there for a year, you've been there for 25 years, doesn't matter. You call me so we can make sure you get what you're owed.
And the backbone to this is always that doctor's note and medical documentation, right?
If you need support, if you need accommodation, if you need your employer to help you with your condition, get that doctor's note. It's all you need to trigger that obligation. Your employer can't deny it. They can't refuse. They can't ask you to see another doctor. They have to abide by that. If they don't, of course, that's a human rights violation. So get that doctor's note. It's a very powerful tool.
We are out of time. We covered a lot of ground, but there's always time for you to contribute and reach out to Lior now that we're done for this particular week. I'll give you the phone number right off the top, how you do that, 1-855-821-5900. The email we always go to, ask@employmentlawyer.ca, and that website, Lior referred to it, used it a couple times actually with the severance calculator. That is pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. And then finally, Sundays, 1 p.m. Do not forget us locally here at the GTA. News Talk 1010 for an hour. Join us, pull up a chair, and join us on that radio show. Thank you for all your time. We'll catch you next week right here, Ask a Lawyer on CP24.